The Kansas wind, forever whispering secrets across the vast plains, carried a hint of loneliness for Thomas Carter. It was 1874, and the land around his small ranch stretched wide and empty under an endless sky. Thomas was a kind man, with eyes that had seen too much hardship but still held a gentle spark. His hands, though calloused from years of tending to cattle and mending fences, could also carve delicate wooden birds for the children of the town. Life on the plains wasn't easy, and it had been even harder for Thomas since his dear wife, Sarah, had passed away a few years prior. Her laughter, once as bright as the prairie sunflowers, was now just a quiet echo in the empty rooms of their small farmhouse. He missed her terribly, a dull ache that never quite left him, like a splinter deep under the skin. Yet Thomas was not one to sit and mope. He rose with the sun, milked his cows, fed his horses, and worked the land with a quiet determination that few could match. Every fence post hammered into the hard ground, every bale of hay stacked high, was a testament to his resilience. Neighbors knew Thomas as a good, honest man, if a bit quiet these days. He didn't complain, he didn't boast, and he always offered a helping hand when someone was in trouble. But beneath his calm demeanor lay a man who felt the weight of his solitude keenly. The ranch, once a bustling place filled with Sarah's songs and the playful yaps of their dogs, now felt too big, too silent. He often found himself staring out across the prairie, not just at his land, but at the horizon, wondering what new beginnings might lie beyond the familiar. The dust motes dancing in the sunlight filtering through his kitchen window seemed to hold more life than he sometimes felt within himself. He yearned for something, anything, to reignite the spark that Sarah's passing had dimmed. He kept his home tidy, his animals well fed, and his fields carefully managed. He was a pillar of quiet strength in a small, close-knit community, even if his heart carried a heavy burden. One sweltering afternoon, a buzz of activity filled the small town square. It was auction day, an event that always drew folks from miles around. Wagons clattered in, full of farmers and their families eager to see what goods were for sale. Everything from plows to kitchen pots, and even some old furniture, was being sold off. Thomas, feeling the familiar pull of community, decided to attend. He mostly kept to himself, listening to the auctioneer's fast words and the lively shouts of bidders. Then a particularly sorry-looking item was brought forward. It was an old barn, not just old, but truly falling apart. Its roof sagged like a tired old man's shoulders, and many of its wooden planks were missing or rotten. One wall looked ready to tumble down with the next strong gust of wind. A few birds had made nests in its gaping holes, and weeds grew tall all around its base. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Who would want such a thing? It was clearly useless. The auctioneer, a jovial man named Mr. Abernathy, tried his best. "A fine piece of land, folks, comes with a rustic structure. Any bids? Starting at $5? Silence. A few more chuckles. $3? Anyone? $2? Mr. Abernathy looked disheartened. He was about to declare it unsold when a quiet voice cut through the afternoon heat. $1, Thomas Carter said, his voice clear and steady. A hush fell over the crowd. Every head turned to Thomas. Did they hear him right? $1? For that pile of splinters and dust? Whispers started up, louder this time. "Thomas Carter. Has he lost his mind?" "He's still grieving, poor man." Mrs. Henderson, known for her sharp tongue, openly scoffed. $1 for a ruin. He might as well have thrown it into the river. Mr. Abernathy, surprised but quick to act, slammed his gavel down. "Sold to Thomas Carter for $1. Thomas walked forward to shake Mr. Abernathy's hand, ignoring the stares and the hushed laughter. He felt their eyes on him, their unspoken questions, their outright mockery. He knew what they were thinking, that he was foolish, that he was throwing his money away, that he was perhaps a little bit crazy. But as he looked at the dilapidated barn, a strange feeling stirred within him. It wasn't pity, but a flicker of purpose, a small flame against the vast emptiness he had felt for so long. The barn was broken, just like a piece of his own heart, and perhaps, just perhaps, it could be mended. The very next morning, before the sun had fully chased away the morning mist, Thomas was at the old barn. He didn't start with grand plans or fancy tools. Instead, he began with a simple broom, sweeping away years of dust, cobwebs, and fallen leaves. The barn groaned and creaked around him, a mournful sound. But Thomas worked steadily, a quiet hum on his lips. He hauled away broken timbers and rotten planks, his muscles aching, but his spirit feeling lighter than it had in years. Passers-by on their way to town would slow their wagons, pointing and whispering. Some would shake their heads, a look of pity on their faces. Others would outright laugh, their voices carrying on the wind. "Still at it, Thomas," Farmer McGregor called out one day, a smirk on his face. "That old heap will fall on you before you make it stand." Thomas simply tipped his hat, a small, polite nod, and went back to work. He didn't let their words sting him. He had faced tougher things in life, and a few unkind remarks wouldn't stop him. He was strong, not just in his arms and back, but in his heart. This barn, this forgotten structure, was becoming his quiet battle. Every nail he pulled, every new board he hammered into place, was a small victory against the sorrow that had lingered for so long. He worked plank by plank, day after day, week after week. He patched the leaky roof, carefully replacing old shingles with new ones he'd bought with his meager savings. He fixed the wobbly walls, bracing them with fresh timber. The work was slow, painstaking, and often frustrating. Sometimes a plank would crack or a nail would bend, making him sigh. But he never gave up. He would simply find another plank, another nail, and try again. The sun beat down on him in the afternoons, and the evenings grew cool, but Thomas kept at it. The barn began to transform, little by little. The gaping holes in the walls started to disappear, replaced by sturdy wood. The sagging roof began to look straight again. It was a testament to his quiet strength and his stubborn refusal to be beaten either by the dilapidated barn or by the town's unkind jokes. The barn was slowly becoming more than just a pile of wood. It was becoming a symbol of Thomas's own resilience. Months passed, and the barn, once a laughingstock, was starting to look respectable. The roof no longer leaked, the walls stood straight and strong, and fresh hay filled a corner. Thomas felt a quiet pride in his work. Now it was time to tackle the floor. Many of the old floorboards were rotten, chewed by mice, or simply broken. He began prying them up one by one to lay down new, sturdy planks. One afternoon, as the sun streamed through the newly repaired windows, Thomas was working near the back wall. He lifted a particularly stubborn, dark plank. Beneath it, on the older, rough-hewn beam underneath, he saw something unusual. It wasn't a knot in the wood or a scratch from an old tool. These were deliberate carvings, faint but clear. They looked like letters, but not words he recognized, more like symbols or secret code. There was a small star, a wavy line, and then a series of 3 dots. He ran his calloused finger over them, a strange prickle of curiosity replacing his usual calm. He pulled up another plank nearby, then another, searching for more marks, but found none. It was just that one beam hidden beneath that one old board. He stared at the symbols, wondering who had carved them and why. Was it just a bored farmer long ago, or did they mean something more? Later that day, as he was testing the firmness of the new floorboards he was about to lay, his hammer slipped from his grasp. It clattered to the floor, hitting a spot near where he'd found the markings. Instead of the solid thud he expected, there was a different sound, a deep, muffled thunk, like hitting an empty barrel. He tapped it again with his foot. Thunk, thunk. It was distinctly hollow, unlike the solid ground everywhere else. Thomas knelt down, his heart giving a little thump against his ribs. He tapped the area again carefully with the wooden handle of his hammer. The hollow sound was unmistakable. It wasn't a large area, perhaps a few feet across, but it was definitely there. He looked at the floorboards covering that spot. They looked like all the others, old and worn, but perhaps a little thicker or more securely fastened. A new kind of excitement, one he hadn't felt in years, began to bubble inside him. It wasn't just about fixing a barn anymore. The strange symbols and the hollow sound whispered of a secret, a mystery hidden right beneath his feet. He decided to leave those particular boards untouched for now. He wanted to think, to wonder, to let the mystery ripen in his mind before he dared to disturb it further. The barn held more than just old wood. It held a secret waiting to be uncovered. Thomas spent days mulling over the symbols and the hollow sound. His mind, usually occupied with chores and quiet memories, now hummed with a different kind of energy. He tried to decipher the carvings, drawing them in the dust with his finger, but they remained a mystery. The hollow thud echoed in his thoughts, a silent invitation to look deeper. He knew he had to investigate, but a part of him felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. Then one evening the sky turned a bruised purple. The wind began to howl, kicking up dust devils that danced across the plains. A powerful storm was brewing, the kind that reminded everyone of nature's raw strength. Lightning cracked across the darkening heavens, followed by deep, rumbling thunder that shook the very ground. Rain began to fall, not gently, but in sheets, drumming loudly on the barn's newly mended roof. Inside his farmhouse, Thomas watched the storm rage. The power of it seemed to stir something within him, a sudden surge of courage. He thought of the barn, standing strong against the wind and rain, a testament to his hard work. He thought of Sarah, and a feeling of her quiet strength seemed to settle over him. Tonight, he decided, was the night. The wildness of the storm felt like the perfect cover, a dramatic stage for a secret waiting to be revealed. No one would be out, no one would see. He grabbed his lantern, a stout crowbar, and a hammer. The barn, even with its repairs, still felt ancient and full of whispers in the stormy night. The wind whistled through the eaves and the rain lashed against the walls, making it feel as though the building itself was alive. He made his way to the spot where he'd heard the hollow sound. The floorboards there seemed darker, older, stubbornly clinging to their secrets. Taking a deep breath, Thomas knelt down. The light from his lantern flickered, casting dancing shadows around him. He carefully slid the tip of the crowbar under the edge of one of the boards. With a grunt, he pushed down, and the old wood groaned in protest. He pried, slowly but firmly, until the nails began to creak and give way. The scent of old wood and damp earth filled the air. With each upward lever of the crowbar, a little more of the secret began to reveal itself, the boards grudgingly lifting one by one. The rhythmic sound of the crowbar against the wood joined the symphony of the storm, a sound of determination cutting through the wild night. With a final, straining heave, Thomas pulled the last stubborn board free. The crowbar clattered to the floor as his lantern light dipped into the darkness below. And there it was, not just a hollow space, but a carefully constructed, hidden compartment, dry and undisturbed. His breath caught in his throat. Nestled within the earthen cavity was an old wooden chest, dark with age and bound with rusty iron straps. It wasn't large, perhaps the size of a sturdy footlocker, but it felt heavy with history. The symbols he had found earlier, the star, the wavy line, and the 3 dots, were faintly carved into its lid. Thomas carefully lifted the chest, feeling its unexpected weight. It had been protected from the damp earth by a thick layer of oilcloth, now brittle with time. His hands trembled slightly as he fumbled with the rusted latch. With a creak and a groan, it sprang open. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a sight that made his eyes widen. Gold coins, dozens of them gleaming dully in the lantern light, each one stamped with the seal of the Confederate States of America. His mind reeled. This wasn't just old treasure. This was a piece of history hidden away during the dark days of the Civil War, which had ended nearly a decade ago. Beneath the gold, wrapped in a brittle, leather-bound pouch, were stacks of letters. Their paper was thin and yellowed, the ink faded, but Thomas could make out the careful handwriting. He picked one up, his fingers gently tracing the words. They were letters from soldiers, addressed to loved ones, filled with hopes, fears, and the grim realities of war. Some spoke of battles fought, others of longing for home, and a few mentioned a secret mission, a desperate attempt to secure funds for a lost regiment. He carefully put the letter back, his heart pounding with a mix of wonder and awe. This wasn't just gold, it was a story, a collection of forgotten voices from a time of great sorrow and division. The barn, which had once seemed so empty and broken, now held a profound secret, a silent testament to lives lived and sacrifices made. Thomas sat there in the flickering lantern light, surrounded by the gold and the letters, as the storm outside slowly began to calm. The wind's howl softened to a whisper, as if acknowledging the immense secret he had just uncovered. He felt a deep connection to the past, a responsibility to these forgotten stories, and a powerful sense of purpose that warmed him from the inside out. The morning after the storm, Thomas rode into town, the old chest carefully secured in his wagon. He still couldn't quite believe what he had found. The gold glittered faintly even through the cloth he'd wrapped it in, and the letters felt heavy with the unspoken stories of men long gone. He went straight to the sheriff, a gruff but fair man named Silas. News travels fast in a small town, but this news spread like wildfire. Within hours, everyone knew. Thomas Carter, the quiet rancher they had mocked for buying a dilapidated barn for $1, had found a fortune. People who had laughed openly now stood with their mouths agape, their eyes wide with disbelief and wonder. Mrs. Henderson, who had scoffed the loudest, actually dropped her market basket when she heard the details. Suddenly, Thomas wasn't just the quiet widower anymore. He was a legend. Folks gathered around his wagon, eager to catch a glimpse of the gold, to hear the story from his own lips. $1, you say? Farmer McGregor stammered, his face red with embarrassment. And all that gold? Thomas, with his usual calm, explained how he found it, about the strange markings and the hollow sound. He spoke of the soldiers' letters, too, reminding everyone that this was more than just money, it was history. The sheriff quickly arranged for the gold to be taken to the bank in the next big town, making sure it was safe. The value of the gold was immense, far more than Thomas could ever need. But he wasn't a greedy man. He remembered the town's struggles, the hard winters, the crops that sometimes failed. He decided to use a good portion of the money to help the community. He paid for a new well so everyone would have clean water, and he contributed to rebuilding the schoolhouse roof, which had been leaking for years. He even helped some families who were struggling quietly and without fanfare. The letters, too, brought a different kind of riches. Thomas worked with the town school teacher, Miss Eliza, to carefully read them. They learned about the brave soldiers, their hopes, and their sacrifices. Miss Eliza even helped find some of the soldiers' families, sharing the long-lost messages. The discovery brought the town together, not just in awe of the gold, but in a shared sense of history and pride. The ridicule Thomas had endured turned into respect, and the quiet rancher became a hero in their eyes. The barn, once a symbol of Thomas's perceived foolishness, quickly transformed into the heart of the community. No longer just a place for hay and horses, it became known as Carter's Barn, a vibrant hub of activity and hope. Thomas, with the help of his neighbors, many of whom now offered their labor freely, eager to be a part of the miracle, finished the final touches. They added benches, a large communal table, and even a small stage for town gatherings. On sunny afternoons, children would run inside, playing hide-and-seek among the hay bales, their laughter echoing off the sturdy wooden beams. In the evenings, families would gather for town meetings, sharing ideas for new crops or discussing plans for a community picnic. Miss Eliza, the school teacher, often held reading lessons there, using the soldiers' letters to teach history and inspire young minds with tales of bravery and longing. The barn's history, the secret it had held, was now openly shared, a testament to enduring hope. Thomas himself found a new rhythm to his life. The ache of loneliness had lessened, replaced by the warmth of friendship and purpose. He still missed Sarah, but the barn and the community it now fostered filled some of the empty spaces in his heart. He wasn't just a rancher anymore. He was a keeper of stories, a builder of dreams, and a quiet leader who had shown everyone the power of perseverance. The barn became a place of new beginnings for everyone. When a family lost their home to a prairie fire, the town quickly set up a temporary shelter for them in Carter's barn while they rebuilt. When a traveling musician passed through, the barn was where he played his joyful tunes, bringing music and dancing to the dusty plains. It was a place where differences were set aside, where neighbors truly became a family, helping each other through good times and bad. Thomas often sat on a bench just outside the barn, watching the life that now bustled within its walls. He remembered the day he bought it for $1, the laughter, the whispers. He smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that reached his eyes. The collapsing barn, a symbol of his grief, had become a beacon of redemption. It was more than just shelter. It was a living, breathing testament to the idea that even the most broken things can be restored, bringing unexpected treasures and uniting a community in newfound hope. The Kansas wind still whispered secrets, but now they were secrets of joy and shared dreams.